17% of energy in the United States is used in some capacity towards food, okay? Starting with, what do we call croplands and rangeland if we're talking about food? The way we do what? What do we do there? Produce. Good, we make it. Yes. And industrialized agriculture, definitely. If we're talking about massive amounts of energy, it's going to be. So we produce food on croplands and rangelands. 4% goes of energy to croplands and 2% to rangelands. So more energy input is placed into croplands than it is rangelands. Makes sense when we talk about it a little more. Why is more energy for croplands? You need to irrigate, which requires energy to power systems. What else? That's later. They don't have to worry about that. That's another industry. Plowing, plow machines. Even if it's self-plowing, there's an investment of energy. It's manpower, animal power. It's still energy being used, okay? The second form of energy goes to what? What do we have to do next? So I grew my crops. What do I do with them? What? Harvest. Well, harvesting is production before export. So I'm going to give you that. Good. Package and export, okay? But in packaging, there's processing, right? So we need to make sure it's ready, packaged, and then delivered to wherever it has to go. Processing 6% and food distribution and preparation is 5%. Those numbers equal the 17%. Like industrial revolution or agricultural revolution or any revolution, what it involves is something really dynamic happen. And there's a thing called the Green Revolution. The Green Revolution exists because there's a lot of less developed countries, which are countries that struggle or don't have the lands or the means to provide food. And they started this revolution where they grew monocultures, which is single crop on a plot of land, not what we consider very environmental, because I already taught you that polyculture, which is many crops on one plot of land, are the best form of farming because it includes biodiversity and allows for crops to withstand problems. But as crazy as it sounds that they did this, they were able to be self-sustained. They were able to sustain their own people with the amount of food they needed because they combined that with GMOs. Okay, so they genetically modified crops to increase their yield, the time it takes to grow, the size, production in general. And right now we're going through our second green revolution. You have to also know that India and Asia were two people that went through this green revolution and were able to become self-sufficient. That's a big deal because they did not have enough food. So why do we industrialize farm? Refresh my memory. What did I tell you? What's the reason for this? Mass production. Why? The population's huge and we need to feed the world. And the reality is, with the limited amount of land that there is in the world to produce crops, farmers need to increase their yield and the time it takes in order to even break even. Okay? They're struggling. So this is important. We need food, but they need to gain some kind of income at the same time. Okay? But with it, there's obviously two good reasons. We need food, right? Number one reason. Comes a lot of problems. And that's what we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about. Industrialized farming is going to increase the use of fertilizers. We're going to talk about the damage that has. Pesticides. Well, we've already talked about fertilizers a lot. What else increases that can cause damage to the environment? Fossil fuels. Energy in general. We need energy to farm. What else increases? Maybe not bad. Could be good. Water. Good. And what's this? Look at corn production. Yield. Good. Because remember, it's not all bad, okay? We increase yield. We increase the time it takes to grow crops, okay? Production in general. And then with it comes all of these bad. I want you to also realize that the input and the output of energy production is very poor. It takes 10 units of fossil fuels to produce 1 unit of food. So that would be saying by unit, I mean 10 joules to produce 1 calorie, right? Because we consider them calories. Or whatever conversion is involved in that. What are the energy inputs coming from? Repeat that for me again, because these are test questions. We just said it. What do these 10 joules come from? In terms of production. Yeah. Where do these 10 joules come from? Why do we need energy to produce food? I'll pause. Irrigation systems. What else? Plowing. Distribution. Processing. All of this requires energy. And then you get that food, which is energy for you to consume. And there's a big gap between it. It's not an efficient system. All right. It also, besides impacting the environment, so that would all be ecological, right? This could be economical. It affects these types of farmers. Who are they? Subsistence farmers. Good. The farmers that farm to grow food just for themselves or for a little bit for the local community, they can't keep up with if they can only grow 10 tomatoes and industrialized farming is growing 6,000, they could obviously lower the prices, and these people are just not making enough money. I'm requiring that you go to the book and look at these things, okay? And then we're going to talk about them because these things are ideas that you have to read in order to link to everything we're talking about. So we talked about GMOs. There's good advantages to GMOs, right? You can make crops that could produce faster. You can make crops that could defend themselves from any external conditions. You can make crops with nutrients. All this is good. But there's a lot of bad too. You got to know both. We really don't know what these GMOs are going to do to our health. We know that they're linked to a lot of food allergies. If you have little siblings, you'll know that this is a common thing now, is allergies. Plants have their own toxins to fight off pests. That's pretty scary. We're eating that, okay? So you want to know about these things. I want you to flip this slide with the slide after because I want to stick to the order, okay? So I'm going to start here with rangelands or animal feedlots that occur on rangelands. So they're packing these animals because we have a need for meat. So they increase production, and it's increased 4 times since 1961 through 2007. This mass production of meat, which occurs in rangelands, but what they call feedlots, where they kind of like pack them in. And then we've got fish farms, our last source of food production. So we went from crops to rangelands to fish farms. What's another word for fish farm? I'm going to give you a letter. I introduced it last time. Aqua.
Fur.
Culture. Fastest growing food industry. I want you to change these words for me. I don't want ocean and land. I want aquatic and terrestrial. Because it's not just ocean. Sorry, it's really little now. It's any body of water, really, because there are fish farms on freshwater, saltwater. There's also fish farms. You could go to somebody's house, and in the backyard, they dug a hole, and there's their fish farm. And they're growing fish and shellfish. Obviously, this for lots of money, right? Good work. All right, so we're going to talk about problems with food, okay? Obviously, I've already mentioned what's leading to them. And I want you to realize that although this chapter is mainly about lands, we also are going to talk about problems with air, water, biodiversity, energy. There's a lot of problems linked to food production, not just land problems. Mainly they come from poor farming techniques. Give me 3 things. So I'm starting with land. So these are land problems first. Then I'll talk about air problems. Then I'll talk about water problems. What problems on land can occur to farming? Overgrazing for sure. What else in farming do we do that's going to affect land?
Poor irrigation.
Poor irrigation. Excess water can destroy land. So we're going to talk about all the damage water can do to land. What else can damage the land?
Like excessive use of pesticides?
Definitely. Good. We're poisoning the land, right? Because pesticides have targets, but sometimes they don't go to the target. And then, you said it. What do you mean by harvesting? What do you have to do to grow crops? Fertilizer, not that bad. We know it's going to affect water, right? If it doesn't get absorbed on land, it's just going to go away. What do we do? What's happening here? What are we doing here? Plowing. We're literally, I want you to write this word down, tilling, okay? We're literally like bringing up land to make it in a certain way so we could plant seeds, to then add water, to then add fertilizer, and to then add pesticides to help the crop be successful.